You want to start off, talk about yourself and what your film is?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm PJ Mills, and my film is The Hostage Situation. It's a short thriller comedy film that was shot in Houston, Texas. And I've been making movies for a long time. Started when I was like in middle school. I always tell people my first actors were Lego figurines, and then I upgraded to actual people. So that was pretty impressive.
Hi, I'm Katie. I have the short film screening Dead Man's Hand here at ARV, and it's my second film, so I'm a total noob here. And it's shot in my house here in Houston, Texas as well. So yeah.
Okay. Austin! Okay. Houston and Austin. My name is Tiana Stewart. I am the director of Twinsies, which will screen tomorrow at 3:30, which was filmed here in Austin, and I think a bit in Dripping Springs as well. And I guess it's a comedy horror. It's also I don't know quite what genre we would put it in, which is why.
It's a dark comedy.
It's a dark comedy. It makes you feel things. Uncomfortable things, but it's in a fun way.
And I'm Michael Sharon. I wrote and directed Looking Back that screened last night, which is another festival just made a poster review that said it was a heartwarming anti-horror dramedy. So that's my favorite description of it so far.
What is an anti-horror?
Anti-horror dramedy. I don't know. It was if you watch the film, it made sense to me.
Maybe it's because go ahead.
I was gonna say if someone said mine was an anti-comedy, I'd be like, so it's like really not funny? Like the opposite end?
Yeah, anti-horror. It's weird. You have to see it.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe, but I thought it was a good description.
I
It's
saw it.
fascinating.
Yeah, I like the description. It was touching.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was, because it's got all these horror elements, but it's very touching. It's just like, aw.
My wife says that every time she watches this, she starts off going, "This is so stupid," and then she cries. It has both those things to it. So I guess let's start with you.
Yeah.
Are you from Texas? Have you always lived in Texas? Have you only made films in Texas?
Ooh, so many questions. I'm from Texas. I'm from San Antonio originally, and then I've lived in
Yeah.
We have so much in common. It's really scary. I told my
Yeah.
husband the other night that I met somebody at the festival that lives my life parallel. And I was like, it's me if I were a dude. And it's just like one thing after another. So yeah, I born and raised in San Antonio. Moved to Austin. I've also lived in Fort Worth. I've lived in Oregon and Seattle, and then my last move was to Amsterdam, the Netherlands, for a little over 2 years. And this is my first film ever, so I'm newbier than you.
You've only made films in Texas.
I've only made films in Texas.
Yeah. Okay.
Go for it.
All right, so I am from Texas. I was born in San Antonio, but grew up in Katy, Texas, outside of Houston, and I'm still there. But counting on the days to move, but life happens. And I've only shot in Texas. Yeah.
So born and raised in North San Antonio, because that's the vibe right now. And when I was living there, I did a lot of film work with just friends and family and that type of thing. But then over time, I ended up going to college in Tennessee. So I did a lot of film work out there, met a lot of people, grew and all that good stuff. Moved to Colorado for a time, lived out there, but then came back to Texas. And of all the places I've lived, I just feel like Texas, especially the hill country that are outside of San Antonio, I just feel like that's home to me. So that'll always have a special place in my heart. And that's where I got my start. So.
Yeah, I mean, I was born in Brownsville. Grew up in Texas, lived very briefly as a child in Tennessee and Louisiana, but like my entire life, my entire adult life has been in Austin, 23 years now. So I've only ever made films here, this is my thing. So I don't know what the Texas filmmakers panel is, but what does that mean to you guys? Like is there anything specific to that? Like anything that sounds like this is a Texas, like what makes Texas a good filmmaking place, right?
I mean, I love Texas, but not where I So, I mean,
Yeah, Katie,
let me just
so-
say that, like, I would love Texas more if I lived in Austin, you know what I mean? So I have to say that, but what I do like about Texas is it's so big, you know, and you can go from one look to another in one state. It's crazy. Like, I just in December was in Big Bend, and it's gorgeous, you know.
Yeah.
And then I'm in Katy, and I'm like, I'm uninspired. You know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy how different all over the state looks, which is rare, I think.
I think another thing for me when I think Texas filmmaking, every person that I've met and interacted with in the film community within Texas has a real do-it-yourself attitude.
Yes.
We're really independent. We're proud of where we come from, and we're hard workers. Not saying other people aren't, but I'm just saying, like, I just love the community that we have here in Texas. There's so much talent. There's a growing pool of talent because we have a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people that were working on my film were from all over the place. They like moved from Portland, from New York, and they came to Texas, and they kind of fell in love with the film community. Now they're plugging in with that, and we're constantly growing. We're constantly developing, and I think we're becoming something that's really special and unique, and we have a lot to offer the film world.
Yeah, and I'm going to piggyback on what you said about going, you know, from one place to another and having it be somewhat completely different. I mean, you can film a Western, and then you can go to, you know, film other genres of movies, because like the landscape changes so much. But for me personally, I feel like my creativity kind of thrives the more the neutral the palette is. I love browns. I love caramel colors. And so like the Texas grass, and when it's dry, I love that. And I feel like movies that film here, I feel like the stories just kind of pop. And I really can't explain why, because I mean, my film is in a house, yours is in a driveway in a house.
Yeah.
But like, I think that Texas, the neutral palette just kind of gets in and seeps in and allows you to kind of pop, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, you know, you guys all kind of touched a little bit on this, but I think what's you go to other places, like you go to LA or New York, and it becomes, you know, and this is a whole other thing. There's this whole balance of like, is film art or commerce, right? And like, you go to those places and you can make real money, and you're making things. I've had many friends move to LA and talk about how in 1 year in LA, they did 10 times as many projects as they did 6 years in Austin, and they hated everything they did in LA, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about that. And so I think the people that stick here and the people that do it here are doing it because they love it, right? It's more about, like, I do this for the art. Like, I work a regular daytime job, you know, 40 plus hours a week, so that I can make my films on the side because I love doing that, right? And I think that that's a little bit of what you find here is people that are just like, I'm dedicated just to do this because I love doing it.
No, I totally agree. And I think that you kind of mentioned it too, like the hardworking. And I think we have somewhat of an attitude of like, because we want to do it out of the passion, we say no a lot to projects. I do. Not because just like time or whatever, but I think like as a filmmaker or as an actor, whatever, like we have that luxury of really doing it for the passion, versus if you were in LA or New York, you're just like churning out over and over again. Whereas I think, I don't know, maybe that's the difference. Here in Texas, you can really just like let yourself saturate in a project because the passion, it allows for that passion.
Cool.
I mean, for me, it's like, I honestly, like, I love acting. So I started making movies because I wanted to act. And so, you know, I'm trying to do the, like, what better way to take hold of your career than create your own content. So it's like a learning process. And, you know, in Texas, it's hard. I mean, let's be honest, like being an actor in Texas is hard. So I like that I've met so many amazing people like through this festival, and like I'm blown away by the talent that is in Texas. It's crazy. Like, and that I feel like, I don't know, I wish we had like a stronger presence, and I feel like it's time that we do. And that like having this opportunity as an actor to just, you know, make your own films, and like it makes you start from the groundwork, you know?
Right.
Where you don't have, like in LA, maybe you didn't need to do that, you
Right.
know? And I think it's really cool. Like,
And I think though that, like, you know, I was talking to someone earlier about this, that like that's a lot of the you know, the tax incentives here. Like they fight it, you know, so much that even Robert Rodriguez, who got them for Machete, then they pulled them because they were like, oh, you're talking bad about the state, right? And so like it doesn't bring those things here. So it ends up becoming a place the people are doing because they love it. Because you know, Austin's had a lot of TV recently, but not, you know, it's not like it was 15 years ago.
Yeah. But I think it also is interesting because filmmaking has become more affordable now.
Yes. Yeah.
When I was in high school, you can't do nearly what you can do now. And the truth is you can get cinema quality material and you can get it at a pretty affordable price.
Yeah.
And that's massive to the independent filmmaking community. And I think just with the size of Texas and the diversity of the landscapes and just everything like we've been talking about, you can do almost anything here. And the opportunities are like endless. And, you know, because I've had conversations with other people from other states about the tax incentive thing. And my take has always been like, I don't need that to do what I want to do. Like I'm gonna make the movie I want to make. And, you know, sure, there's going to be struggles, but that's where the creativity blossoms. You know, you find ways to make your visions and your dreams come true. It sounds super Disney of me, but like, I don't know. I've never taken no for an answer. And I've always been like, I like it in Texas. I'm going to make it in Texas. And I was joking with someone earlier where it's like, I've never been to New York in my life. And I was like, when I go to New York, I want to be like established that way. Like I can like go and be like, oh, I made it. And I never came to New York. And people be like, what? Like totally thrown off. But it's like, I want to make it here. I want to make it where I call home and then show other people they can do it too. Right. It's always been kind of a goal of mine. It's like, you can do this anywhere you are, whether that be Ohio, Texas, Florida, New York, California. Like find your dream, do what you want to do, make it happen, and then share it with the world.
Yeah, and I think, you know, to go back to what you said earlier, I think Texas has a very DIY attitude. Like, I'll get it done, I'll make it, right? And I'm going to get this done on my own terms, right? As opposed to I have to go somewhere else to make this.
Yeah, and I for Twinsies, you know, I got, with Austin being the live music capital of the world, my sound engineer had only ever done sound for musicians. And my cinematographer was like, you want to try out some film stuff? And he was like, yeah. And we have the really good sound because of it. And then the composer had been taping or recording other musicians. And so like we got access to and permission really good music that we probably wouldn't have been able to elsewhere, and also without paying for it. And so like just those connections music wise and scoring, I think being in Austin, you know, you had like all these musicians just jump in and help. I thought that was really cool. And yeah, I mean, there's music in LA, tons of music. But I think that DIY attitude comes in. It's like, oh, yeah, you record live shows. Well, I trust you to record my film. And it worked out, but yeah.
I mean, Austin literally has a statue on 6th and Congress of a woman with a cannon. That, I don't know, do you know the story? You know the story of what this woman is? That at one point, the state was going to move the capital to Houston, and she had she knew that her boarding house was going to like go under if everything moved, and so she pointed her cannon at like the state land office and said, "I will shoot." And that this woman is made a statue of on that capital, right? And it was just like, you know, that's the Texas spirit to me, right?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Does anyone have any questions, thoughts about Texas? You guys, I mean, it's a small group. Do you guys have any? Are you guys filmmakers from here? Or?
I am not, but I live in Houston.
Okay.
I'm curious about like what you all think about the news of Bastrop, you know, getting like a $500 million studios coming in, already has struck around and everything. You know, because we've talked a lot about, you know, the DIY Lone Star kind of aspect of this, but that could be changing. Is that exciting? Is that?
I mean, I think so. What I think about it is, I think that those people are hoping the state's going to grow up and stop being babies and give the incentives, right? The problem is, as long as they don't give the incentives and Georgia does, it's all gonna stay there, right? It's always stay there. We have a 911 Lone Star that's in Austin, that's all shot in LA, right? And until the state gives the incentives that are gonna make them wanna come here, those studios are not gonna get used, right? Hopefully they will, right? But these are babies who, when Robert Rodriguez made Machete and they were like, oh, you're making fun of things in the state, we're pulling your incentives, right? So, I mean, I hope that it becomes something, right? I would love to, when I moved to Austin 20 something years ago, there was a big industry here. Like, it was the third largest in country, right? It was LA, New York, and then Austin for film production, right? And that all went away. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on.
Well, I can say this. One, I grew up visiting Bastrop as a kid. My family and I would go camping there. And the fires that hit out there like a couple years ago just devastated that community. And I literally drove through Bastrop on my way to Austin. And I hate to get like metaphorical, but they planted all these new trees. And so there's all these like little baby trees that are growing up. And first it looks like a little like mini forest. And I just thought, like, that's so cool. It'd be cool to shoot a movie in here. That's always what my mind does. But I think for me, just the fact that there are studios moving into some of these cities that not a lot of people know about is massively exciting. I agree there's the potential that it might fizzle out, but I think for me, as someone who's always been very much like an optimist and very much wants Texas to thrive and wants these smaller towns that not a lot of people know about to kind of get a name for themselves outside of controversy. Because I know like with Waco, there was the big, controversy that happened there with the siege. And then all of a sudden it's like Fixer Upper came along and like reestablished the city as like a TV hub, like HGTV's all out there and they've got an office. And I'm just like, that's awesome. Like I want small towns in Texas not to just be known as like, oh, it's some hole in the wall place in Texas, or it's that place in Texas that there was a big fire. Like I would love to have more of a film presence in these places to tell stories about the people that live there, because those are the people I grew up around. And those are the people I know. And, after you've seen like 27 movies about a struggling actor in LA, it's like, these are cool movies, but I would love to see, a movie about a blue collar worker in Bastrop or something like that. Like those are the stories I would love to see more of, because those speak to me and my family and stuff like that.
Yeah, I will say though that Bastrop, since you used to go there, Bastrop is basically a suburb of Austin now. It's really expensive to live there now. Like, it's become an expensive suburb of Austin.
Yeah, I'm excited from the acting point of view, because TV has been coming here just enough to make a lot of us SAG eligible, but we're in a tricky spot because you only get, I think, 2 or 3 SAG projects before you have to join the union. And if I join the union here, I shoot myself in the foot. I can't work anymore. But if I don't join the union, then I can't work on more union projects that come into town. So there's this weird limbo for us here in Texas. So I think hopefully if more studios move out here, it'll push it in one direction or another, so that I don't want to have to move to LA to continue to act on SAG films like HBO and stuff. That I just don't want to. And I would love to continue to act here. So yeah, I'm kind of excited on the actor front of it. Not sure about the filmmaker front, 1 movie in, but yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I would assume that each of you have lots of ideas that you want to see go to film. How do you decide which one to push first?
Speaking for me, a lot of it has to do with what's in front of me as far as like what I have access to. I always hear people talk about like they got their back pocket idea, that's their big blockbuster that's going to be millions of dollars to produce and all that stuff. I've never necessarily been that person that just has this back pocket idea that's $1 million project. I've always been like, what can I make with what I have? And I try to build stories out of that, because to me, my mentality's always been little steps are going to get you much farther than these massive like steps. And so to me, it's like, well, if I can make a short film and get it in some festivals, then I might get some traction from that, and then I can make something a little bit bigger. And if I make goals that are achievable, then I can actually achieve them. And then it's like you build up that confidence to take bigger and bigger steps, and then all of a sudden you're way higher than you ever expected to be. So I know for the hostage situation, the movie I made, I had like another film that I was kind of had on the back burner. That was another short film, but it included more actors and a more elaborate set. And I was basically like, okay, well, I can make this one movie in my garage, or I can make this more elaborate thing that's going to cost more money. And then I was like, well, the garage one then. You know, so it's partly financial, and then partly just like, who do I know at that point in time that can help me achieve what I want to achieve?
For me, as like a newer filmmaker, like I find that I work in goals, and I find that I want to achieve certain things with certain films. And sometimes it's influenced by the film that came before. Like I want to improve this, you know, like our film that's in now, I wanted to improve our lighting and our use of color. And then for the next one, it's like I want to, because our last film was a silent film, you know, and I want to like have dialogue and story and focus on that. And like, it's just on what goals do I want to move on to continue to improve. So for me, that's kind of how I work.
Yeah, for me, it's, I don't know, it's a little different. I'm really stubborn. And so I've written a few short scripts, and I've had, you know, my friend Audra actually do the table reads with me with other actors. And some of these projects, I'm like, cool, now I'm over it. Like it was fun, and it's, you know, it was fun, but it didn't spark that, I gotta plan this, I gotta film this. And it sucks because then Audra and my friends will come up and be like, hey, that script was a lot of fun. You're gonna make that? I'm like, I don't know, I'm kind of over it already. And then there's one script that I've written that I can't get out of my head. And so I think that for me, that's the one that I'll probably end up making, because I think about it every other day, and it's been months since I've written it. So I think for me, it's when it takes over my thoughts. Hopefully the story isn't too big where I can't produce it and can't film it. If so, maybe I'll find help. But yeah, I think for me, it's the scripts that won't leave me alone after they're written.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to love it, right? You have to love the idea. I have things that I have ideas for that until I figure out, like looking back, the film is here. The very genesis of the idea came 5-6 years ago, and it was just like a little tiny concept of like a ghost in the back of camera of a car, right? And it wasn't until one day when it struck me on how to tell that story in a way that I loved that I wanted to make, right? And in talking about earlier about how, you know, this is us DIY making it on our own, trying to find a way, beg, borrow, and steal to get our movies made. Yeah. You have to love it, because if you don't love it, that's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work to get done. So it's like finding something that like drives us to make it, right? I think is really the answer for me.
Good question.
Well, and I've got another question. So first time ever coming to the film festival.
What brought you to the festival? Let me ask that real quick.
My son and director. You know, but I'm kind of oblivious. Like, what would it cost to start out? Like, I have no concept of what your first movie, like, what would your budget need to be? I mean, is there a low end and a high end, or an average?
It can go. So a lot of filmmakers don't like to talk about their budget, right? I'll tell you that it can be anywhere from nothing to, you know, I was recently on a Q&A at another festival where I didn't want to say my budget because the other person spent $35,000 on their short, and it made me very uncomfortable because I didn't want to make them uncomfortable, right? But the reason I can do them so cheaply is it depends on your relationships, right? Like my director of photography and I have been best friends since we were 10 years old, right? The guy who does all of my post audio, I've known since I was 11, right? And so like we have a really great working relationship, and we just love making films together, right? So I have an advantage a lot of people don't have, right? And so I can make things for cheaper. Some people spend a lot more. It's very hard. I don't know if you guys want to have anything you want to input on that. Like I said, some filmmakers are very much like, I will not tell my budget. But
I mean, for our film that Taylor and I made, our budget was a Ouija board and a bag of pretzels. So that was all we spent. I mean, I have equipment that I purchased used, you know, but that was it, and I used my house, you know, and I write for like a low budget at this time of my life, and I can't even imagine having a budget. That'd be so cool, you know?
Well, I can say, having experienced both sides of the spectrum, where I'm working with a budget that is $0, and then a budget that's like $3,500. Which is still not a lot, but it's like, it's still very small. But like, there's never enough of whatever
Yeah.
you're needing. Like, even if you're working with $1 million budget, you're not gonna have enough money. Like, it's always a problem. And so just kind of being aware of that, like, you know, when it comes to film, like, there's always gonna be something that you could have, but you can't. And so that's where the creativity comes from, and that's the out of the box thinking. Like, okay, with what we have, what can I do? Like, and there was a movie I saw, I can't remember who made it, it was some big Hollywood director. He made a whole movie with an iPhone. And I remember going to the theater and watching it, and I was blown away, because I'm like, if they hadn't told me that this was shot with an iPhone, I wouldn't guess that it was shot with an iPhone, because it was just really wacky and creative and original. And I was like, I could make this with what's in my pocket right now. That's so wild. And I firmly believe that if the story's there and the performances are there, it's going to be successful, because that's what matters.
Yeah, Audrey and I worked on a very, very small budget. Because we had buddies who had buddies who had buddies, and who were very, very generous. That being said, as an actor, one of the things that I nitpicked, I wanted to pay my actors, and it wasn't very much, but I paid them both and they got lunches, and we had, and it was during COVID, craft services, which is a table of snacks and drinks and stuff. We just did individual tote bags for everybody because COVID and everything. So like, we did spend money, and then I think there was a couple of people involved in the film that were like, you know what, throw me $100, I'll do the whole thing, kind of thing. And so yeah, it was very relational. And then I think a lot of our budget went to film festivals too, the submission fees and.
I spent more on film festivals.
Yeah. So yeah, it was. I feel very lucky that we knew a lot of people who wanted to help. But I did reach out to one of the same people that I worked with, and I was like, so for a music video, and they're like, we wouldn't touch it until it was like 25 grand. I was like, okay then. I got that one project with them. That was the freebie. So yeah, I guess it just, it's, you can start with a budget, you can raise money. Audrey and I kind of was like, how much can you contribute? I can contribute this, let's split it down the middle. And then some things we meant to pay for, we didn't have to, because somebody was like, I got this, which was like incredible.
No, thank you. I mean, that's what's motivating to someone that has an interest and is looking at you as an example to see what you're able to do. That's what sparks and motivates others. So thank you. That's a good question.
What are some other questions? Yeah.
I'm curious about, since we spoke so much about, Texas being such a specific kind of place and a microcosm for film in many different ways that you all explained, what excites you most about kind of the actors here, or are they different at all, or is that just like a different, if all actors are generally the same across any place you go, or do you find actors to be completely different even in Texas that you love or hate or whatever it is? You can take that question how you want.
Yeah, can I go first? I'm an actor, so like I know a lot of actors. I have a lot of friends in LA and New York and in Austin. And without any judgment or putting anybody down, I think Austin actors they're not wrapped up in a lot of the things I think you have to be wrapped up in when you live in LA and New York. And I'm just gonna let you interpret what that means. But for me, working with my actors, I felt that they were more malleable, and I could turn the dial with them. Whereas I feel like if I were working with some of my friends out in LA, I think that they would have been a little bit more, rightly so, bullheaded in their ideas and what, their training and their, I booked 20,000 commercials, I know how to do this. So I don't know, that's my experience. I wouldn't say, I haven't worked with LA actors or New York as a filmmaker, but I know them. Yeah, there's different mentalities, I think, depending on the coast that you are, especially like when you talk to them about acting, some of them it was like, oh my God. Okay, stop. Whereas, yeah, the actors here in Austin, I just feel have a real chill vibe. If that makes any sense. It's just kind of like a little bit more low key. And they're open to collaboration, I think, a little bit more. But that's my limited experience.
I was gonna say too, all the actors that I work with in the state are oftentimes they're under the radar, or they don't have like this project that they got to work on with Tom Cruise or Robert De Niro or something. Like they don't have these projects that have that high caliber like thing they can go talk about at a party or something like that. Because I've talked to actors from even Atlanta, and they're nice people, but it's like they talk about like this one movie that they did 7 years ago, and they like had like a little one line with like a big actor or whatever. And I'm like, that's cool, but like a lot of the Texas people that I work with, it's like they just love the art form. They just love the ability to do acting. And so like every opportunity I work with them, is like they're just so grateful, and they're just so like good natured, and they have a great attitude, and it's so much fun to work with them because they realize that every opportunity to be on set is like an exciting one, and it's a chance to do something that maybe they don't get to do every day. So
yeah, I think it's what we were saying, same thing earlier about Texas filmmakers, is that people here do it because they love it, right? And it's a little more, the people that have moved to LA or New York are more like it's more about the business and for good or bad, whatever that is.
Right.
But like here, it's people are just like, this is what I love doing. I'm going to do it regardless, right?
And I think that speaks to, I know you said there's not necessarily a bullheaded perspective or mentality, but I think in a way it's like when it comes to that specific aspect, the bullheadedness is basically like, I don't need to go to New York and LA to act. I'm going to do it here. And it's like, it feels very blue collar to me. And I know that's a word that gets thrown around at this film festival a lot. And I love that word because I think it describes Texas filmmaking pretty well, as it's very blue collar. Like, we're gonna do it ourselves. We're gonna figure it out. And I think there's so much talent here, and I love working with actors here because I think they're just good. More questions? Sorry.
We were joined by some Texas filmmakers.
Yeah.
All right, another question.
Okay.
Did you go to a university, a college, to figure out directing, or is it something you were on an apprenticeship? How did you get to your point? So I've got a young son, what would be his next step if that's the path he chose?
So I can speak to that. I went to university in Tennessee, which I know I mentioned that earlier. I got a Bachelor of Arts degree in film, and I know depending on what the goal is long term, like it can be beneficial or it cannot be. It's very much the type of thing that I knew for me. I wanted to get a degree that would help me get a job that would allow me to make money to support family, because that was something that was always important to me. I wanted to have a wife. I want to have kids. And so I do believe that has allowed me to get that, because my 9 to 5 is a video production coordinator with a school district. It pays the bills, keeps the lights on, keeps my kids warm. And I'm so thankful for that. And I'm thankful for that fact that it also is in my wheelhouse and my interests. So it's like I go to work and I get to do video. It's not exactly short films, but it's like I'm still working with the camera. I'm still learning and growing in my field of interest. And the dream, because I'm a big dreamer, the dream is eventually one day to get to the point where it's like I can just focus on my feature film ideas and music videos and stuff like that, because that's my side hustle and it's getting more and more of a like all-consuming part of my life. So almost there. So yes, I did get a degree, and I do believe for me it has been beneficial, but it depends on the circumstance and the person and all that stuff.
And for me, I was a theater major and grew up in theater, and then I, truth be told, had a baby in college. So then life changes. So I was like, oh, I'll do broadcast journalism because then I'll still be on TV and I'll sort of be acting, and got a degree in that. My broadcast journalism teacher was really into filmmaking, luckily. So we had to do broadcast journalism, which was basically we were making movies. And I learned so much, and then I didn't use my degree at all, but I did luckily, use a lot of what he taught me now. But no, I didn't formally have a degree, but I feel like it's just, you have a vision and you just kind of go with the vision, and luckily I kind of had a little bit of background with it from this professor who was supposed to teach me journalism.
For me, yeah, I I'm a musician first, and then got into acting. And then I read a book. I read a book that's called I'll Be in My Trailer, and it's about directing actors. And I was like, ooh, I want to do that. I want to direct actors. How do I do that? And I read, I Googled, and I talked to other filmmakers, directors that I had worked with. And I paid them for their time. I was like, hey, if you Zoom with me for half an hour, I'll buy you coffee. You know, like give me a cheat sheet, you know, and tell me how to do this. And they gave me great advice, but I learned a lot hands-on. There was this moment where, you know, I'm a first-time director, and my cinematographer asked me a question, and I was like, And he's like, no, you have to make this, you have to make this decision. I was like, so I'm not just directing actors. He's like, no, this is your project. You have to tell me everything. You have to make decisions. And so like, they taught me as well, and I learned a lot. But there's this joke too that I'm gonna say real quick that maybe y'all have heard. It's like, how many first-time directors does it take to screw in a light bulb? I don't know. What do you think? I felt like I said that every day. Like, I don't know. What do you think? But yeah, I read an insane amount, and luckily had a lot of people kind of at work as bumpers, like bowling. I would just like throw myself down the lane, and they're like, this way, this way, this way.
Yeah, I mean, I went to school, I got a degree in computer science, which I've also never worked in. You know, to me, it depends on what you want to do, right? And it depends on the school, right? I think that I'm a storyteller, I want to tell stories, right? So like, I want my 9 to 5 that I do to pay my bills to be completely separate. I don't want to work in film in any way other than telling my own stories, right? So like, I work a job in management for a company that like I enjoy as my day job, and I do not want to make anything film related for pay, right? Unless it's my stories, right? And then I would just say, as far as film schools, I mean, there's some really great ones that you will learn a lot. And then I've also worked with people that were film school graduates that had no idea how to do anything, right? So it just really depends on the school, right? I just made a bunch of movies for a long time, and they were really bad for a long time, and then at some point they started being better, right? And that's how I learned.
I want to speak to something that might feel like it's a little off topic, but it's something that I found to be one of the best things I learned going to university. Because the college I went to wasn't super well known for film or anything like that. It was just a little bitty college in Mountain, Tennessee. But they had a film program that was focused on documentary. And, you know, I found documentary interesting. I was like, oh, that'd be cool. And learning how to create and shape a documentary and work with people when you're doing interviews one-on-one, especially when you're talking about personal issues. My big film project that I did like my last year was a short documentary on my friend who died from cancer when we graduated together. So it was like literally she went to high school graduation, and then the next day found out she was diagnosed with cancer. I went off to college, she battled cancer, I came home and she died. And I wanted to tell her story because it really kind of opened my eyes to the reality outside of, you know, my own head. Because, you know, I went out to college with all these grand dreams, and like she never got that. And so sitting there talking to her parents and her friends and her sisters taught me so much about how to be like quiet in the right moments and be sympathetic with real people. And at the time I didn't realize this, but it taught me so much about how to work with actors and how to get real performances out of people. And sometimes you have to create a space that's very like safe. And I know that's an overused term, but it's like somewhere where an actor can really get into the moment. And as a director, that's your responsibility. Your goal is to take control of that environment and let them feel like they can express themselves. And having been in a documentary background and creating that space for real people when I was talking to them, it really helps in a major way. So if you're ever like, oh, maybe I should make a documentary, 100%, it'll teach you so much. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Any of these Texas filmmakers back here have a thought on what is Texas filmmaking?
I mean, I agree with everything you guys are saying. It's like I feel like Texas is more like I want to do it, you know, more than like being lucrative about it, which is nice. It's great, but I think there's a lot of creativity here, and it's more like let's just go and do it. I think this festival is like that for the people that like do like they just go all out on it. It's like I'm just gonna do it because that's what I did. I just like jump headfirst, and you know, like some of them have said, as time goes on, like yeah, your films get a little bit better. And speaking of documentaries, I might want to delve into that. That might be my next thing. So yeah, that's
It's great.
I would say too, Texas filmmaking to me is community. I came from Los Angeles. I'm one of those people that came from here from LA. Sorry about that, y'all. Are you okay? Are you okay? Oh my
It took a minute to get back up. It was like, wait a minute. It's like, oh, wait. Oh, no. Should I laugh? Is it okay?
she got up in true like film like
Yes.
I'm okay.
It's not really Chaplin who you brought.
She did it on purpose.
But yeah, there's like a real sense of community here, and I feel that people are very supportive of one another and want to champion each other, whereas sometimes in the bigger markets, it's very much about yourself and what can another person do for me instead of collaborating and working together.
Yeah, and that's how I met you actually, because you were looking for somebody to fill the zombie role, and I was like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That sounds great. I love being on set. I'll
Yeah,
do it.
Lish knew you from another film.
Yeah.
It's like, we need someone real quick who can do it. She's like, oh, this is Tiana. Like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. She came out, right?
Yeah, and I hadn't
Yeah.
met you before, but I was like, sounds fun.
Yeah.
I love it. That's how we met. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
very community.
It's a great community of like, you know, a high tide rises all boats. Let's all work together. Let's try to all do good things together rather than being so competitive and tearing each other down, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's definitely a thing that you see here that you don't see in, you know, LA or wherever, right? Anyone else have thoughts?
All
There you
right,
go.
sorry.
Yes.
So besides budget being an issue, what would be your next biggest hurdle?
For me, scheduling, finding time that works for everyone, especially when these are people that a lot of them have 9 to 5s, a lot of them are busy. Finding a time that works for everyone is sometimes the most complicated thing. I know I had a production day scheduled for the beginning of March. Had some finance adjustment that kind of had to happen, and my car broke down, so I had to like put it off for a month. But finding a time to like make up, we're like, all right, we're pushing it back to May. And then everyone's sending me their calendars, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the worst part of the process. Just like finding a time that works for people and being like, are y'all, if you work this weekend, like, can you make it work? Like, can we wiggle something around? I'm like, no. And then it's like, okay, well, we gotta do this weekend. And then someone's like, that doesn't work for me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, so like that to me is the most complicated part of the process. But I think sometimes that can be something that maybe is not the director's expertise, because that's the thing I hate. And I've had talked to people before, it's like, why are you worried about the schedule? I'm like, I don't know, no one else is gonna do it, so I gotta do it, so.
Right, but I mean, that all falls into like, all these other problems really have to do with budget, right? So like, he really should not be as a director doing the scheduling, but he is because there's no budget, right? The film project I'm trying to get going right now, we're trying to find a location, right? And like, if anyone knows a warehouse or anyone that we can shoot in, we're looking for something, but it's because of budget, right? We don't have the money to go and just walk up to someone and, hey, here's 10 grand, we use your warehouse for 2 days, right? So it really, there's all of these problems, but it all comes from the fact that there's no money scheduling. If he had the money to pay everyone, you know, a full amount, they would make their availability, right? But it's like, everyone's like, well, I got this 9 to 5, we gotta work around to get this, right? So it really does fall, that's the main problem, right? But I mean, if you guys have any other thoughts?
No, I am in full agreement. I was
Yeah.
gonna say location, but you're right. It
Yeah.
really, because like I know nothing about location scouting. We got very lucky with Twinsies. Our friends offered us his house, but like even just the small amount of research, I was like, how do we find a house? Oh my god! You know, you have
Yeah.
insurance that you have to buy. You have, you know, so yeah, it does boil down to budget. I think that's one of the biggest hurdles. Is it just kind of affects everything.
I will say though, speaking to locations and that type of thing, I found it to be interesting because in LA, in New York, if you want to shoot something, people there already know the process. They know they can make money. If you ask, they're like, oh, can we shoot, at the front of your house? And they're like, oh yeah, no problem. I want $7,000. And you're like, but it's just one shot. Oh my gosh. Here in Texas though, especially the little towns, there's still kind of that like magic moment where people see you in the camera. They're like, whoa, can I be in a movie? And can you shoot at my house? I'll let you do it all weekend, And I'm not saying that's always the case, but some of my most favorite locations that we've ever gotten access to were literally people that were just like, you're making a movie? Can you can go at my house? And I'm like, is that okay? And they're like, yeah. And so it's like, they don't always roll out the red carpet for you, but there's a lot of people that still are very much like enamored with the process.
Oh, see, I require the red carpet. I think that's my hurdle.
Well, on looking back, Eric is over here as our actor from it. He knew these people, this older couple that had a house, and he's like, oh, they'll let us shoot here, right? And I was a little uncomfortable when we saw the house because there's a whole wall of crosses. And I was like, there's not just monsters in this, but there's like a lesbian wedding. And it's like, I was like, they're going to be like, but they were just like, they got drunk on set. They had a little bar. And they were sitting at the bar, like pouring themselves drinks. And it's like, oh, this is so cool. What are you guys doing now? What do you do with that thing? What's happening? And they just thought it was the coolest thing that we were filming in their house.
So, funny story about a location that I was working on a short film with. And this happens all over the place, but I just thought this story was so Texas, where it was this little farmhouse outside of Houston in LaGrange. And we were doing like a story about I can't remember the details about it, but basically we were in this little farm area and there was this big cow that was in the middle of the field. And the director was like, that cow can't be there in the shot. And so he's out there trying to like get the cow, and this cow just won't move. And I just remember laughing. I'm like, this is the most Texas thing ever. Move this cow out of the way. And he's like not moving. And I'm like, yeah, that's how it goes. So the cow did eventually. It was a whole process.
Yes, so make sure your budget includes
Cow. A cowboy, if you will.
All cows in the movie.
Yeah.
I have a funny location story.
Go for it.
We were shooting a short film a couple years back, and we also needed a house, like for like 2 scenes, like very like minimal time. And someone in the crew was like, we can use my grandma's house. And like, he did not tell her. It's like, she's like 90, she was like 97, like not like, she wasn't like all there like anymore, but like we showed up and like, she probably thought we were kids or something, because every time something would fall or any type of noise, she would like yell from the other side of the house, what are you kids up to? What's that? And we're like, nothing, grandma, everything's fine. And like, it was, and she was like walking like her walking. She's like, what are you guys up to? What are you guys doing? And so we had to do everything really quick because she was getting really cranky. So I thought that was hilarious.
Good old Texas grandma.
Yeah, she was a very cranky grandma.
What's that cow doing in the house?
Nothing, Grandma.
More questions?
I'm curious about how do you promote your films? I mean, what do you do besides word of mouth and going to festivals, or any type of social media that you're pushing, or how do you kind of gain some more interest? Because ultimately, I would think that to go bigger, you need more budget. So you're trying to get more people involved, and you're trying to broadcast your film, because if they're interested and they like it, they're gonna be donors. So how do you go about kind of promoting your film that you found to be successful, or to just gain awareness to it? Let's say it that way.
That is a great question. I don't really have an answer to. I'm discovering that as I go along. I've talked to people that have, I work with a guy that has this stuff on Amazon Prime, but it's like you can get anything on Amazon Prime for the most part. You're just gonna upload it.
I have stuff on there. I make nothing.
Yeah. So, but it's funny because he talks it up. He's like, I'm on Amazon Prime. I'm like, dude, there's a lot of people on Amazon Prime. It's like, but the truth is like, I'm torn, because on the one hand, I want to be able to make the projects and make the money, but on the other hand too, it's like, I just I just love sharing my work. And so like, I know I've done some stuff that I've been really proud of that I just put on YouTube and I haven't made a dime on. And I'm just like, I'm so proud of, and like lots of people have seen it. Like I did a little documentary on my alma mater because there was a little bit of controversy at the school, and it like went, semi-viral when I posted it, because it was like all the people that went to my school and my classmates were like, oh my gosh, like, look at this thing. And like my phone was blowing up for like an entire weekend, and I felt like freaking Steven Spielberg for a weekend, you know what I mean? And I wasn't, but it's like, I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you. I know I post a lot on social media about what I'm doing, and I get the word out. I have a lot of people that are like, oh, I want to see your movie. And I try to do like big releases where I'm doing, information about it and all that stuff. And my goal is to hopefully, like over time, as I create more content and meet more people, because I found that it's all about who you know and who you network with. And if you meet the right people, like, sometimes things can kind of work out. And even just like, even the film that I did, like, that's in the festival is like a lot of people that worked on the film, I just met them. And it was like, oh, I want to work with you, or, oh, I would work for you, and you don't have to pay me. And I'm like, well, I want to pay you something. And they're like, no, don't. And I'm like, what? So it's like you meet people that you build a team, and then it sounds cheesy, but when you have a group of people around you that are on your side, you feel like you can take on the whole world. So it's like, that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's like I have this group of people around me that are all very focused on moving forward and getting somewhere. And I'm just trying to, take it one step at a time. And talk to me in 5 years, and hopefully I'll be like, do this, and it'll all work out.
I mean, I feel like that comes to budgeting too, because marketing is like a one-person job. Like, I feel like we think it's easy, but it's a lot. And to market a film, like, would take a full-time job almost if you're gonna like market to actually like generate interest and income. And like most of us independent filmmakers, like we have kids and jobs and other things, and then we're trying to make movies, and then on top of making movies, and you have to market the movies, and it's really difficult when you're new to the thing, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think too, it depends on what your specific goal is. Like, I'm just starting now, so like my small goal is I want more actors to want to work with me. And so like I as far as marketing goes, I mean, we really, other than Instagram and Facebook and the film festivals, we haven't thought past that, because right now it's about the street cred and just, making connections and like, I started something and I finished it. Like, I feel like that is a pretty admirable goal.
Yeah.
And it was for me, like, I finished something.
Well, I mean, in you two being actors, like the amount of times I talk to actors who tell me, well, I worked on 5 films in the last year that I've never heard from them again.
You never
It never got finished, it never went anywhere, right?
And then you
so
don't
like,
get
when
it.
it comes to me as an actor,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's even a bigger thing for you, that like, I did this and it's out there, right?
Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do too, depending on what you make, right? So with the short, it's film festivals, and then it's getting out there for people to watch it, but you're never gonna make any money on it, right? You're not gonna get it. Yeah, I've made very little money on stuff I have on streaming. I did, shorts TV, I made a little bit of money, right? But like, you don't make much, right? But with a feature, you do have more capability. If you do it right, you have more capabilities to sell it and get it out there, right? So it kind of depends on what you're doing, but it's hard no matter what it is.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, because she's in the audience, that I am the direct product of Paulina's journey. Because honestly, like, we've been friends for a long time, and just, she's a filmmaker, she's an incredible writer, great producer. And it was one of those moments that I think we worked on a set together, and I was like, man, like, I feel like she basically paved the way. So I you did, yeah. I was like, well, maybe I can Google how to write a script. I mean, maybe that's not what we did, but
How to write a
how to
script.
write a
I actually
script. Yeah, and so like, maybe, so in turn, I would hope that, one of my goals is not, marketing per se, but maybe another woman in the area is like, Tiana, that Kookazoo can do it. Maybe I can do it too.
I would also say, just to add on the whole overall question, I feel like social media helps like a lot. And sometimes you just gotta act like your stuff is like super awesome. And people will believe that. You know, because we kind of I have a web series on Amazon Prime also, you know. But and we were trying to hype it up when we were doing like getting ready to release it. And I mean, we ran Facebook ads. We put a little bit of budget into that, and like we grew an Instagram page, followed pretty much every single person on our lists. And I also reached out to the morning news here in Austin, and you know, and they put us on there. And as a result of that, we got a little bit of traction leading up to the release of the. So sometimes you just gotta like really reach out and like I said, make people believe that you're something.
I was gonna say too that I know there can sometimes be an obsession on like numbers and like how many people are seeing something. But one of the most influential and profound things that ever happened to me was there was a stretch of time I was doing YouTube, and I was like doing a lot of stuff on YouTube and got a little bit of traction on there. And then I kind of fell off and I wasn't doing it anymore. But there was someone that reached out to me via email and basically said like, man, like what you did on YouTube, like your work and you talk about your film journey, like it like saved my life because I was like at the end of my rope. And I just happened to stumble across one of your videos and it really spoke to me and had a profound impact on my life. And I'm just sitting there like, what? Like, dude, like that has got like 50 views. Like, what in the world are you talking about, you know? But it's like, I try to encourage myself because I'm also a musician. And so I play like shows and stuff. Sometimes I play at bars where there's literally 2 people in the audience, and sometimes I'll play bigger shows. But I try not to lose sight of the fact that like, even if you're playing to nobody, play your heart out and, you know, put your all out there. And if someone walks in and happens to see that at the right moment, you can change their life forever. And I want that to be kind of my mantra. And it's a challenge because it's hard when like, oh, you put something out and no one's watching it. But it's like, just because you don't see like just tons and tons of views or tons of money coming in, like that doesn't mean it can't affect a person. That doesn't mean that, you know, your face can't be ingrained in someone's brain. Because I literally was at my university one time and someone reached out and was like, oh, you're one of my favorite people on YouTube and I'm coming to visit your school. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, is this a stalker situation? And it wasn't, but it was like, you just never know, like, you know, how your work can affect people, even if it doesn't, you know, reach like massive audiences or whatever. And sometimes those smaller projects can have a more profound impact than freaking Avatar, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I think, you know, to speak to both of you guys, what you were saying about social media and stuff, I think a lot of us, I mean, I think most artists have imposter syndrome, right? You know, like, we're terrible at this, but you've got to like, social media is about acting like you know what you're doing, right? Acting like you're doing it well, right? Even though we all know we're doing it well, but maybe we're not, I don't know, that's imposter syndrome. So Lish was either doing the hustle or telling us that we need to wrap it up. So I think it's time for us to wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you for.
You said hello.
And